The assignment came in at 6:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I was 3 sips into the only good coffee the vending machine on sub-level 2 ever produces. A narrow window between too hot and undrinkable that lasts approximately 90 seconds, and my tablet buzzed and ruined it. Escort Sector 7 entry. Visitor clearance. Omega Provisional. Report immediately. Omega Provisional. I stood there with my coffee and read that twice. Omega clearance is the kind of clearance that makes senior directors straighten their spines when it walks into a room. Provisional means nobody fully vouched for it. Together, those two words form a combination that shouldn't exist, the bureaucratic equivalent of a locked door that's also somehow open. I flagged my direct supervisor, Colonel Dana Marsh, through the comm. Marsh, the clearance level on this escort. Walk him through, Rays. The provisional tag means. Walked him through. She disconnected. Dana Marsh has 12 words she uses when she's operating under orders she doesn't like. She used 4 of them in 2 sentences. I counted. I've been counting for 6 years. I left the coffee. Sector 7's exterior entry is a loading dock that stopped loading anything in 2026 when the facility shifted to underground delivery systems. Now, it's just a gray concrete rectangle with bad lighting and a security panel that beeps at a frequency that lives permanently behind my left eye. I badged through at 6:53. He was already there. Not packing, not checking his phone, not doing any of the things people do when they've been waiting. He was standing in the center of the dock with his hands loose at his sides, looking at the far wall the way you look at something you've already memorized. My first read, professional and automatic. 6'1", lean without being thin, somewhere between 35 and 50 depending on what his life had been. Dark skin, close-cropped hair going silver at the temples. Calm face, not relaxed, calm. Those are different things. Relaxed means the threat hasn't registered yet. Calm means the threat registered a long time ago and stopped being interesting. He was wearing a gray jacket, dark trousers, and shoes that stopped me mid-step. I finished the step, filed it, kept walking. "Dr. Rays," he said. Not a question. "Mr. Webb." I pulled up his provisional file on my tablet as I crossed the dock. Photo matched. Name, Marcus Webb. Affiliation, listed as DARPA adjacent, which is the federal government's way of writing we'd rather not say. Purpose of visit, consultation. Duration, single day. Everything about the file was technically present and functionally empty. "You've been waiting long?" I asked. "About 6 years," he said. I looked up from the tablet. He had the expression of a man who had just said something true and was waiting to see how long it took the other person to understand it. "Sector 7 runs counterclockwise," I said. "I'll need you to stay at my left shoulder. Don't touch any panel you're not directed to touch. If an alarm sounds, you stop moving entirely and wait for my instruction." Questions. "The alarm on sub-level 4 has a 7-second delay before it locks the blast doors," he said. "The override code was changed 2 weeks ago to a 6-digit sequence, not the 4-digit one listed in your current protocol file. You'll want to know that before we get down there." I looked at him for a long moment. "Follow me," I said. The facility runs on a grid system, 9 sectors, 3 sublevels, with connecting corridors that the official blueprint labels as maintenance access, and everyone who works here calls the spine. The spine is not on any document that has ever left this building. You learn it by working here long enough, or you don't learn it at all. Marcus Webb walked at my left shoulder, exactly as instructed. I watched him in my peripheral vision, the way I watch everything that doesn't fully make sense yet. Not starring, just maintaining contact. The way you keep a hand near a surface when you're not sure of your footing. His shoes. I'd clocked them on first sight and then deliberately set them aside, because my brain had flagged something it wasn't ready to articulate yet. Now, in the corridor lighting of the spine, I let myself look properly. Carbon fiber composite sole. The weave pattern was a hexagonal compression lattice. I recognized it because I'd seen the prototype specs 2 years ago in a materials research brief that was still classified. The program had been funded, then defunded, then quietly refunded under a different project number. As of 6 months ago, the composite existed in lab quantities only. You could not buy those shoes. You could not be given those shoes unless you were inside a specific materials research chain that had, to my knowledge, produced exactly 0 consumer-ready units. He caught me looking. Not self-conscious about it, not defensive. He looked down at his own feet, then back up at me, with the expression of a man checking whether the punchline had landed yet. "Comfortable," he said. "You get used to the smell." "What smell?" "Burnt copper," he said. "It fades after the first few hours." I processed that for exactly 1 second, decided I didn't have enough information to do anything useful with it, and kept walking. The spine runs north to south on sublevel 1. There's a junction at the midpoint where it branches left toward the quantum systems lab, right toward the archive sector. It's unmarked. It has been unmarked since the facility was built. New personnel miss it for the first 3 months minimum. I turned left. Marcus Webb turned left a half step before I did. I stopped. He stopped 2 paces ahead, then turned back to look at me with that same expression. Patient, like he was waiting for me to catch up to something he'd already finished thinking about. "How did you know to turn left?" I asked. "Muscle memory," he said. "You've never been in this facility." "I've never been in this facility today," he said. The corridor hummed around us. Somewhere above us, the ventilation system cycled through its 7 a.m. sequence. I know its rhythms the way I know my own pulse. Everything was exactly as it should be. Everything except the man standing 2 paces ahead of me, wearing impossible shoes, turning corners he shouldn't know. "Keep moving," I said. He turned and walked. The Quantum Systems Lab sits at the end of Sublevel 2's eastern corridor behind a biometric entry panel and a door that weighs 400 kilograms. I've worked behind that door for 6 years. I've watched the facility's entire senior technical staff rotate around me. Directors promoted, researchers transferred. 2 separate lead engineers who quit within the same fiscal year after what the official record called creative differences, and what everyone in the spine called the Henderson incident. I don't talk about the Henderson incident. I badged us through the eastern corridor entry at 7:11. Marcus walked beside me in silence for 40 seconds. Then he said, without looking at me, "The Henderson incident wasn't your fault." My badge hand stopped moving. He kept walking, measured and unhurried. "The thermal cascade in the secondary array," he said. "The read on the pressure valve was wrong because the sensor had been logging a false positive for 11 days. You flagged it twice. Both flags were overridden by Henderson himself. When it failed, the incident report attributed cause to a calibration error in your sector. It was in nobody's interest to correct that attribution." I was behind him now. He'd walked 3 paces while I stood there not walking, which is not something I do. "That report," I said, "is classified at a level that requires director-level clearance or above," he said. "Yes." He stopped and turned to face me. There were 4 people who ever read the full version: Henderson, Marsh, Director Calloway, and 1 person who wasn't supposed to read it but did because she had a secondary access path through the archive indexing system that nobody had closed yet. The ventilation cycled. "That person," he said, "was you." My own breath was very loud to me suddenly. "You found it at 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday in November of 2029, he said. "You read it 3 times. You saved nothing. You deleted your access log. You went back to your quarters and you didn't sleep for 2 days. The eastern corridor is 91 feet long. I have walked it approximately 800 times. It has never felt as long as it did in that moment. "Who are you?" I asked. "I told you," he said, "6 years." He turned and kept walking. I followed him because I didn't know what else to do, which is not a sentence I have ever been able to say about myself before or since. The consultation room on sublevel 2 is a gray box with a table, 4 chairs, and a signal-dampening field that makes everyone's ears feel slightly full. I use it for sensitive briefings. I've never brought a visitor here. Visitors go to the presentation suite on level 1, with its good lighting and its wall screens and its careful performance of institutional credibility. I brought Marcus Webb to the gray box. I sat down. He sat across from me. "Tell me," I said. He told me the way you tell someone what floor to press in an elevator. He was from 2039. He had been assigned to a temporal insertion program that had been running on his end of the timeline for 4 years. The program was called Orison. I won't explain the acronym because he said it didn't matter, and he was right. It didn't. His role in Orison was supervisory. He oversaw field insertions, personnel sent back into specific windows of time to prevent specific institutional failures. He had been sent back to this facility, this date, this morning. "Why?" I said. "Because you're about to be removed," he said. "And if you're removed, the quantum systems program fails. Not immediately, in about 14 months, but the failure originates here, this morning, with a decision someone already made before you walked into work today." I looked at him across the gray table for a long time. Then I pulled out my secondary scanner, not the standard biometric reader, the materials analysis unit I carry because I work with experimental composites and it's part of my standard kit, and I ran it across his forearm. The scanner is designed to return a tissue density profile and flag any non-biological material inclusions. Standard security sweep. Takes 4 seconds. It took 11. The readout it returned had 3 standard markers and one that I had to look at twice because the classification flag it threw was one I had never seen activate outside a controlled test environment. A temporal displacement marker, the kind that, in theory, would only appear if a subject's cellular isotope ratios had been altered by exposure to a specific type of field that, in theory, did not yet exist. The scanner wiped the result. Not flagged it, not stored it in a pending review file. Wiped it, cleared buffer, returned to standby. I set the scanner down on the table with great care. The way you set something down when your hands are not entirely steady and you'd prefer nobody noticed. "The shoes," I said. "Materials program gets fully funded in 2033, he said. "The composite goes commercial in 2035. They're very comfortable." "You said that already." "It's still true." I put both palms flat on the table. The thing about being a systems engineer is that you spend your professional life looking for failure points in things other people have declared functional. It is not a skill you turn off. It runs in the background like a process you forgot to close, scanning, flagging, cross-referencing. My background process had been running on Marcus Webb since the loading dock. Wrong shoes, known corridor, classified report, biometric anomaly, scanner wipe. The system kept returning the same result. I didn't trust the result. I trusted the data. "What's the shutdown order?" I said. He didn't answer the question directly. He does that. I would learn this over the next 40 minutes, not as an evasion but as a sequencing. He answers the question he thinks you actually need answered before he answers the one you asked. It is deeply irritating and intermittently brilliant. Instead of the shutdown order, he told me about the decision I almost made in 2029. The Henderson incident had left me with a choice that isn't in any file anywhere because I never told anyone about it and never intended to. After I read the classified report, after I understood what had been done to my record and why, I had assembled over the following 3 weeks a documentation package. Every flag I'd filed, every override authorization, every timestamp. The kind of package that, sent to the right office, would have corrected the record and ended 2 careers, one of them Henderson's and one of them Marsh's. I built it over 3 weeks. I encrypted it. I set a transmission delay. And then at 11:58 p.m. on a December night, sitting in the gray box alone, I deleted it. Not because I was afraid. I want to be exact about this because I have been exact about it every day since. Not fear. I deleted it because the program I was protecting, the quantum systems work, the actual research, would not have survived the institutional fallout. The work mattered more than the record. I made the call. Nobody knows I made that call. Nobody could know. There is no file. There is no record. There is only a decision that lives in a single human mind and has never been spoken aloud. Marcus Webb described it in precise detail, including the timestamp. 11:58, he said. Not midnight. You checked the clock. You wanted to be sure you were doing it consciously and not because you were tired. The signal dampening field made my ears feel full. I was there, he said, not in this room. I was watching the access logs from a monitoring position. I saw the package exist and then not exist, and I saw the timestamp, and I wrote it into my operational record as the moment I understood what kind of person you were. What kind of person, I said. It wasn't really a question. The kind, he said, who protects the work even when the work doesn't protect her back. I looked at the gray wall behind his head for a moment. That's not a compliment, I said. No, he agreed. It's an observation. The compliment is that you were right. The work did matter. What you protected in that room became the foundation of a program that, he stopped. That's not what you need to know right now. What do I need to know right now? He told me about the shutdown order. My access had been flagged at 5:30 that morning, an hour and 17 minutes before my tablet buzzed with the Escort assignment. The flag hadn't come from Marsh. It hadn't come from Director Calloway. It had come from a lateral security review initiated by a man named Gareth Price, who held a facilities oversight position that sounds administrative and functions as the institutional equivalent of a slow leak. The kind of damage that doesn't announce itself, just accumulates until something collapses. Price had been building a case for 8 months, not against my competence. He was too careful for that, and my competence is not a thing that can be credibly argued against without significant preparation. He'd built it around access irregularities. Small ones. The kind that appear when someone has been navigating a system the way I navigate it, through secondary paths, through archived indexes, through the maintenance access corridors of institutional record-keeping. He'd found the traces of my 2029 incursion into the Henderson file. Not the file itself, the ghost of the path I'd used to reach it. The shutdown order had my name, my access ID, and a recommended action, immediate credential suspension pending review. In a facility like this one, a credential suspension pending review has a standard duration of 4 to 6 months. In 4 to 6 months, the quantum systems program hits its critical integration window. Without me in the lab for that window, the integration fails. Not catastrophically, quietly. The kind of failure that gets attributed to technical complexity and results in a program being quietly defunded. I'd spent 6 years building something that was about to be disassembled by a man who had never once set foot in a lab. How long before the order activates? I said. It was submitted for director-level signature at 6:30 this morning, Marcus said. Calloway's schedule has a 9 a.m. review block. Standard authorization takes 11 minutes, I said. I know Calloway's authorization pace. It was 7:43. I had 77 minutes, give or take Calloway's coffee habits. The Escort assignment, I said slowly. Marsh gave it to me. Marsh gave it to you, he confirmed. Marsh knew about the flag. Marsh has known about Price for 3 months, Marcus said. She couldn't move against him directly without exposing how she knew, but she could get you out of the building before the authorization landed, using a clearance level high enough that your departure would be logged as sanctioned duty rather than flight, I said. Rather than flight. I sat with that for a moment. Dana Marsh, who speaks in 12 words when she's operating under orders she doesn't like, who told me to stop asking questions and walk him through, who had been running her own quiet operation for 3 months and hadn't told me because telling me would have required explaining how she knew, and explaining how she knew would have required. She found the Henderson file too, I said. Marcus said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. The escort assignment, I said. You're not the one being escorted. I was never the one being escorted, he said. This whole time you've been. Yes. I stood up. Not dramatically. I stood up the way I stand up when a system diagnostic has finished running and it's time to act on the results. Clean, purposeful. The gray box hummed around us. I need my kit from the lab, I said. Drive copies of the current integration files. Nothing that looks like I'm taking anything. Everything that matters. Bay 3 locker, he said. Your secondary drive is already there. Marsh put it there at 6:15. Of course she did. The extraction point. Main entrance, he said. Front door, signed out on escort duty. The assignment logs you leaving with a provisional Omega clearance visitor. Nobody questions Omega. Price's people will be watching the side exits, which is why we're using the front door. I looked at him. Shoes that don't exist yet. Patient eyes. The faintest trace of something metallic in the recycled facility air. I hadn't registered it consciously until he named it in the loading dock. Burnt copper. When you go back, I said, does this work? Does what we do in the next hour actually? Dr. Ray's. Nadia. He paused. Something moved briefly across his face, not quite a smile, not quite something else. Nadia, I'm here, aren't I? I picked up my scanner from the table. I clipped it to my belt. I walked to the gray box door. Stay at my left shoulder, I said. Don't touch any panel you're not directed to touch. I know, he said. I know you know, I said. I'm saying it because it's correct procedure and I don't abandon correct procedure. No, he said, following me out. You never have. Phase 7, the quiet exit. The thing about a facility that monitors everything is that it tells you, without meaning to, exactly what it's monitoring. The cameras on sub-level 2 run a sweep pattern with a 4-second gap at each junction. A legacy of the original installation that everyone above my pay grade knows about, and nobody has ever prioritized fixing. I know the pattern the way I know the vending machine's coffee window, not because I plan to use it, because I pay attention to systems and systems talk. Bay 3 locker, secondary drive, right where Marcus said. Marsh's handwriting on the adhesive label, her lowercase r, the one that curls back on itself. 6 years I've been reading her handwriting on equipment logs. I pocketed the drive without breaking stride. We moved back through the spine, my natural pace, not hurried, the pace of a person who works here and is going somewhere specific and unremarkable. Marcus at my left shoulder, both of us silent. The facility sounds moved around us the same way they always do. Ventilation cycling, the low-frequency hum of the quantum array 2 levels below, the distant percussion of the security rotation doing its 8 a.m. sweep. At the sub-level 1 junction, I turned right, toward the main elevator bank. A researcher I've worked alongside for 3 years was coming the other direction, head down, tablet in hand. He looked up, registered me. Registered Marcus, gave the specific nod that facility personnel give to Omega clearance, without being exactly sure why, a nod that's half deference and half I don't want to know. We rode the elevator in silence, Ground level lobby. The front desk security officer, Davies, 24 years old, 2 years in the post, runs his badge sweeps with metronomic reliability and will make an excellent senior officer in about a decade, looked up as we approached. Dr. Ray's escorting out. Escort complete, I said. Logging visitor departure, Omega provisional clearance, consultation concluded. Davies typed it in. The facility doesn't require Omega visitors to submit to exit biometrics. It requires the escorting officer to log the departure, which I was doing cleanly, with my credentials and my unrevoked access and my face arranged in the expression of a person completing routine paperwork before her 9 a.m. lab session. Callaway's 9 a.m. review block hadn't started yet. "Have a good one, Dr. Ray's," Davies said. "Always do," I said. The front door opened. Nevada hit us, dry air, wide sky, morning sun already doing its best. The kind of flat bright that makes everything look like it was installed yesterday. The facility sits in a basin between two low ridges, and from the front entrance you can see approximately 11 miles of nothing in any direction, which is the point. We walked across the car park at the same pace we'd walked the spine. No one came out the front door after us. No side exit opened. No vehicle moved. At the edge of the car park there was a gray sedan, government-issued, engine off. Marcus produced a key card from his jacket pocket, the jacket pocket that had already contained, at various points in the morning, exactly the things he needed at exactly the correct moments, and the sedan unlocked. I stood by the passenger door and looked back at the facility. 9 sectors, 3 sublevels, a vending machine on sublevel 2 with a 90-second coffee window, 800 walks down the eastern corridor, 6 years of work that was about to survive the man who'd been trying, carefully and quietly, to end it. Price's shutdown order would land in Callaway's review block in approximately 11 minutes. My access would be suspended. The credential suspension process would initiate its standard 4 to 6 month review. And during those 4 to 6 months, my integration files sitting on a secondary drive in my pocket, encrypted in a format that only I could access, would be in the possession of a woman who had left the building on legitimate escort duty and committed no procedural violation that could be documented or prosecuted. Gareth Price had spent 8 months building a case against access irregularities. He was about to discover that the person he'd been trying to contain had walked out the front door of his containment and logged it herself. I got in the car. Phase 8, the closing image. Marcus drove. He drove the way he did everything, without urgency, without the particular tension that infects people when they've just done something significant and are waiting to find out if it worked. The basin opened up in the windshield and the road cut straight through it, and the facility shrank in the side mirror from a complex to a cluster to a faint gray geometry against the ridge. We drove in silence for approximately 4 miles. "Where are we going?" I asked. "There's a secondary contact point in Hawthorne," he said. 40 minutes. Marsh will meet you there. You'll have everything you need to work remotely through the integration window." And after the integration window, "The review concludes," he said. "Price's case doesn't survive scrutiny once Callaway has time to actually read it. The access path you used in 2029 was a ghost. It was closed. There's no active violation, and Marsh's own record of the Henderson override authorizations turns out to be something she's been maintaining very carefully for 3 years. She was building her own case," I said. "She was building a contingency," he said. "There's a difference." The road ran between 2 flat stretches of pale ground, and the sky above it was the particular blue that exists in Nevada in the morning before the heat makes everything shimmer. I watched it for a while. "The program," I said. "In your time, what does it become?" He was quiet for a moment, not reluctant, just arranging something. It becomes the thing that makes Orison possible, he said. The quantum integration work you complete in the next 14 months is the theoretical foundation for temporal displacement field research. Without it, the math doesn't exist. Without the math. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Without the math, he doesn't exist. Not in this car, not on this road. I looked at his shoes. Carbon fiber composite, hexagonal lattice. A material that wouldn't exist commercially for another 4 years. I thought about the materials research brief I'd read 2 years ago, the one that described the lattice structure as a theoretical compression model that required a quantum-derived manufacturing algorithm that nobody had managed to produce yet. Nobody in 2031, anyway. The manufacturing algorithm for the composite, I said. Is it? Yes, he said. That's mine, I said. That's yours, he said. I sat with that for a while. The road, the sky, the sedan moving through the basin at exactly the speed limit, because Marcus Webb drives at the speed limit, I had noticed, with the precision of a man who knows what happens when small procedural details go wrong. You came back for the program, I said. I came back for the program, he said. And the program exists because you came back to protect it. Yes. That's a closed loop, I said. Most things are, he said, if you look at them long enough. The Hawthorne turnoff appeared on the horizon, a green sign at the edge of the flat. I thought about Dana Marsh, who had not told me about price for 3 months and had instead maneuvered 2 separate operations into alignment to extract me from the building before I could be stopped, who had placed a secondary drive in Bay 3 at 6:15 in the morning and said 4 words to me on the comm and trusted me to do the rest. I thought about the December night in the gray box, 11:58 p.m., the transmission package blinking in the queue, my hand over the delete key. The work mattered more than the record. 6 years later, a man wearing shoes made from my own mathematics had driven 4 miles down a Nevada road to tell me I'd been right. When you go back, I said, do you remember this? He glanced over just briefly. I'm remembering it right now. That's not what I asked. He looked at the road. Yes, he said, I remember it. Is it? I stopped, reorganized. Does it turn out to matter that I know? The sedan slowed for the Hawthorne turnoff. You deleted the package, he said, at 11:58, not midnight. You checked the clock. You wanted to be sure you were doing it consciously. Yes. In 14 months, he said, there will be another moment like that one. Same structure. A choice between the record and the work, between what's owed to you and what the work needs from you. And he pulled onto the turnoff road. The facility was gone from the mirror now, replaced by the flat and the ridge and the enormous mundane sky. I'm here, aren't I? He said. He said nothing else. 40 minutes to Hawthorne, the road straight and pale and long. I looked at my hands in my lap, the secondary drive in my jacket pocket, the 9 sectors and 3 sublevels and 6 years reduced to an object the size of a thumb. The work, my work, the thing that a man had crossed 8 years of time to stand in a loading dock and wait for me to notice his impossible shoes. I had a lot of questions. I asked none of them. There's a particular skill, not taught in any program, not listed in any credential file, of knowing when you have exactly the information you need and no more, and sitting with that, and not pulling on the threads that unravel things. I learned it in a gray box at 11:58 p.m. on a Tuesday in December 2029. I used it now. The sedan moved through the basin. The sky held its color. I didn't move for a long time. Not because I was afraid. Not because I didn't know what came next. Because some mornings hand you something enormous, and the only correct response is to hold very still and let the size of it settle into you properly. before you stand up and carry it the rest of the way. Marcus Webb drove at exactly the speed limit. His shoes caught the morning light coming through the windshield and held it.